Hello, everyone, and welcome to Book Talk Crosshairs with Catherine Hernandez. My name is Christian Mehta, and I am the Assistant Vice President of Engagement at Ryerson University. We are really excited about this new webinar series for Ryerson's alumni and friends, and we can't wait to hear about this amazing book, Crosshairs, written by Ryerson alum author Catherine Hernandez. Before we get started, I'd like to cover a few housekeeping items. This webinar is being recorded and available online afterwards, so don't worry. You're going to get all of it to you soon. All of your mics and videos are off, so if you have any questions, please send them via the Zoom Q&A function, and we will address them at the end of the discussion. We will also be announcing the two winners of the Crosshairs book draw at the end of the event. Okay, now I'd like to start by acknowledging the land on which Ryerson is located. Toronto is in the Dish with One Spoon territory. The Dish with One Spoon is a treaty between the Anishinaabe, Mississaugas, and Haudenosaunee that bound them to share the territory and protect the land. Subsequent Indigenous nations and peoples, Europeans, and all newcomers have been invited into this treaty in the spirit of peace, friendship, and respect. I'm thrilled to introduce to you the author of Crosshairs, Catherine Hernandez, and the moderator for today's event, Marcia Lederman. Catherine is an award-winning author and the outgoing artistic director of B Current Performing Arts. Her first novel, Scarborough, won the Jim Wong Chu Award for the unpublished manuscript, was a finalist for Toronto Book Awards, the Evergreen Forest of Reading Award, the Edmund White Award, and the Trillium Book Award. And she was long listed for Canada Reads. She has written the critically acclaimed play Sing Kill, the Femme Playlist, and Eating with Lola, and the children's book M is for Mustache, a Pride ABC book, and I Promise. She recently wrote the screenplay for the film adaptation of Scarborough, which is currently in post-production by Canopy Films. I can't wait, with support from Telefilm Canada and Real Asian Film Festival. Her second novel, Crosshairs, was published simultaneously in Canada, the US, and the UK in 2020. Marcia Lederman is the Western Arts correspondent for the Globe and Mail, based in Vancouver. Hi, Marcia. Before joining the Globe, Marcia worked for CBC Radio, mostly in Toronto. Before that, she worked in commercial radio as a reporter, anchor, and talk show host. She is a Ryerson grad as well, graduating from the Radio and Television Arts program in 1988. She earned her honors BA in literature at York University as well. While at CBC, Marcia worked as a TA in Ryerson's journalism program. Born in Toronto, she has lived in Vancouver since 2007. Her first book, Kiss the Red Stairs, a memoir about intergenerational trauma, is scheduled to be published by McClellan Stewart in 2022. Looking forward to that one as well. Marcia, it's over to you.
Thank you so much, Christian. And hello, everyone. I'm honored to be joining you this morning from the unceded territories of the Squamish, the Musqueam, and the Tsleil-Waututh. It's a beautiful place to live, and it's Vancouver, so it's raining, and it has been for I don't know how long. But I'm very happy to join you today. Catherine, hello.
Hi there, Marcia. Lovely to share a screen with you.
Same. Thank you for giving me nightmares about something other than COVID-19. That was
that's basically what the general consensus is with regards to this book. Yeah.
Let's talk about it because there's a lot to talk about it, and there's so much to dive into. Crosshairs. This is the book. I've got it right here. It's an apocalyptic novel, speculative fiction. The floods have come to Toronto, then the wildfires, food is scarce, people have been displaced from their homes, and the people in charge decide that one answer is to look to the scapegoats, to create scapegoats, the others. And the others become the target of the rebuilding project that they call the renovation. And the others are people who are not white. The consequences for them are absolutely devastating, genocidal. So this is a work of speculative fiction, but I was interested, Catherine, in how you came up with the idea, what the genesis of the idea was.
Well, it occurred to me to write the book after witnessing the headlines with regards to the Pulse massacre. And just in case you don't remember what had happened, but at the Pulse nightclub a few years ago in Orlando, Florida, there was a shooting claiming 49 beautiful lives, most of them queer, trans, Black, Indigenous people of color. And when that occurred, I realized that this book had to be made. I wanted to express what it was like to always feel in danger as a QT BIPOC person, to feel nervous and afraid for my QT BIPOC family, and to question ourselves about like what is the price for staying passive in the face of fascism, and what is the price of fighting back. And so I'm sure that a lot of us are considering this right now with the rise of the far right, the unabashed racism and homophobia that we're seeing around the world, especially after surviving the last 4 years with Trump being in power in the United States, but also coming to terms with the fact that those beliefs existed well before him, and facing some really ugly truths about ourselves.
And we're seeing it with, I mean, I just sort of joked about COVID-19. That's no joke, but we're seeing it with that too, because these communities are more harshly affected than other communities.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think it's making us all question, well, who has access to resources, who doesn't, and why is that difference there? So I think that a lot of us are, including myself, realizing how much how much privilege I have in this world to be able to get things, to have access to supplies when other communities are having very difficult time. Even like people, like for example, migrant workers who are working hard to give us supplies such as fruit and vegetables. It's making us realize all of the unseen labor that we take for granted.
Indeed. The main character is Kay, a drag queen who is Black. And so therefore it's a double whammy against Kay. And I wanted to ask you about that intersectionality. Someone who gets targeted in more ways than one is the person at the center of this novel. How important is it that that's recognized?
Oh, very important. And I'm so glad that you bring this up, just because a lot of people asked about his identity, and yeah, intersectionality is really important for me, because a lot of times when we think about fascism, so for example, when you think about the Holocaust that occurred in World War II, a lot of times people think that it was just one community, but actually it also included people who were deaf, hard of hearing, the disabled, people who had mental health issues, and people who were queer, trans. And usually when it comes to fascism, the first community that is targeted are the disabled and elderly. And we definitely see that with COVID right now, is that there is a sense of uh, like just fearlessness with regards to a virus, a deadly virus, because a lot of people believe that the ones who are going to be targeted are going to be the most vulnerable, so the elderly, disabled, and not them, right? So, which is not the case, but it just goes to show you, just like how the AIDS crisis really showed us how like the widespread homophobia and transphobia throughout the world, is that COVID is really teaching us how little we care about our vulnerable communities.
First, they came for the elderly
Yes.
people. Exactly,
Yes,
right?
exactly. And I'm sorry, I got sidetracked with regards to that, but with regards to Kay, is that you definitely see that he is Jamaican Filipino, which was important to me because of the rampant anti-blackness in the Filipino community, and I wanted to shed light on that. And also I wanted to show a character that in the face of fascism, there's no way that he can, as he says in the book, he can't wash off the gay, he can't wash off the Black, and so that was why he is who he is.
You call the the genocide, which is what it's shaping up to be, the renovation. And I wondered if that was a shot at the capitalist world that we live under, where certainly in your city and my city, real estate is absolutely out of reach for most people.
Yes, well, if we look back on in history, is that oftentimes when there is a genocidal campaign that unfolds, is that it is definitely marketed as something that's really positive and uplifting, and then of course, the question is uplifting and positive for who, right? And when it comes to, and also the word renovation was really important to me. As ironically, I am like a really big fan of like renovation shows, like I love HGTV, but at the same time, we in this time of COVID, we have to ask ourselves, how are we complicit in that when development, industrialization is the reason as to why we are so vulnerable to viruses such as COVID? Is that how did capitalism drive us here? Our need to improve our spaces and to be on par with everybody else. And so that's what the word choice was really important for me, is that I wanted it to sound positive and I wanted it to be connected to something that I feel is responsible for today's demise.
I just want to mention that in a few minutes, we'll be taking questions. So if you have a question for Catherine, you can send it through the Q&A and I will make sure to get through as many of the questions as possible. The book starts with a trigger warning, and I can't remember ever reading a novel that did start with a trigger warning. Can you tell me why that was important to you?
Oh, trigger warnings were important for me for this particular book. Obviously, it doesn't apply for every book. But for me, I really wanted people to sort of be in their bodies while reading the book. I don't think suspense was necessarily a tool that I needed. What I wanted people to think about was more being aware of where their body is, how much they were resisting what I was writing, and all of the sensations going through their body as they were realizing their complicity in similar acts. Because a lot of what happens in Crosshairs is actually things that are already unfolding. It feels like it happened yesterday, in fact. I wanted body awareness, and I believe that in some cases, trigger warning helps people think less about the surprise and more about how they are reckoning with the information of the book.
I wanted to ask you about some of the government leaders, because they did seem reminiscent of some of the actual government leaders that we're dealing with right now. You've got an Ontario Premier who's got problems with the sex ed curriculum. You've got references to the gravy train, a zero tolerance hotline to report immigration fraud, and most tragically, refugee children being separated from their parents. So to what extent was the writing of this book informed by actual political events?
Oh, very much so. I mean, all I had to do was just like tune into Al Jazeera, and I had like a lot of material to go on. It definitely, a lot of the occurrences in the book are ripped from the headlines, most definitely with regards to what is happening to the Rohingya right now in Myanmar. And usually when you do a book like this, you're sort of looking back in history about genocidal campaigns that feel like a million years ago. But for this book, I felt like all I had to do was just turn on the TV or listen to the radio, which was so horrifying. I wanted to capture what the effect of political whim is on people's emotional realities. And so there's definitely that, those two things are going on in the book, is that you see these really big political decisions being made, and then it affects actual relationships and people's access to goods and services. I also, my partner always says, it's like, if you don't want bad things to be said about you, don't act badly. And so if the politicians didn't want to see themselves in this book, then they can do better. They can most definitely do better. I think right now we're at a critical time in history where the politics are pretty enraging, and it's obvious that capitalism is much more important than people's safety. And that's been a very heartbreaking thing. And so I'm glad that my resistance has come in the form of writing this book.
I want to talk to you a little bit about research. A lot of the book takes place actually around the area near Ryerson, Young Dundas Square and the Gay Village. Did you spend a lot of time walking those streets as you were writing?
Yes. I mean, definitely in the neighborhood of Wellesley, like Church and Wellesley, I frequented there. Oh, that's so sad to say that in past tense because of COVID. Frequented there because of performing, because I am a queer performer, and that during yeah, like during the time I was researching the book, one of the most poignant places that I visited often was the AIDS memorial that is right beside the 519 Community Center, because I thought about that, about how in war there is a remapping of the city and, yeah, like a renovation of a city in order to claim spaces. And I thought how tragic it would be if that memorial was taken down because of a genocidal campaign that does target people from the queer community. And like, what would that area look like? So I had to really dig deep and do these really scary exercises of imagining beloved places such as Buddies and Bad Times Theater and Glad Day Bookshop, which is the oldest queer bookshop in the world, to see it ruins after a campaign such as the renovation. Yeah, it was a painful exercise writing the book for sure.
Another question about research. There's a scene, I don't want to give away too much, but there's a scene with a parade that was reminiscent of a Leni Riefenstahl film. And I was wondering if you looked at any old propaganda, genocidal propaganda in writing this.
You know, it. I mean, I'm aware of Leni Riefenstahl, but it was more along the lines of watching the Santa Claus parade. I know that sounds really odd because a lot of people find that the Santa Claus parade is quite joyful. Um, but for me, I don't know, like with certain gatherings, I think we can also consider how not inclusive some of those gatherings are. And also, yeah, it's not my kind of thing. But I thought about, like, well, what if there is something that's very joyful, but it's connected to genocide, which you definitely see. I mean, like, if you look at images of lynching, which is quite intense because that's what I had to do to research for the book, is that I was looking at people's bodies. So when people are witnessing a lynching, because it's quite horrible to watch, is there's a weird smile that is on their face and this joy, and I'm not quite sure, I'm not saying that they are joyful. What I'm saying is that they are definitely putting on this facade that I'm going along with this horrid action against this person. So I wanted to capture that, and so you see that I don't want to give away too much, but even the things that people are wearing are based on images, like old images of lynching from the United States.
My gosh. Okay, before we get to the questions, I want to ask you about responsibility. This is really important. You write at the beginning of the book, to the people of privilege, you will survive your discomfort while reading this book. But many like me, who sit dangerously at various intersections of identity, will not survive long enough for you to complete the last page. What will you do? Is this book a call to action?
Absolutely, absolutely. I care little about awards and about critical success. What I care about are allies reading the book and realizing that allyship must start in the body, otherwise, it means nothing. Again, we live in a critical time in history where if we don't make really big decisions about how our body sits in the world and the conversations that we have with one another, the actions we have with one another in our organizations, all the way to, like, conversations over the dinner table, we are facing imminent disaster. And I mean that with all of my heart. I think that it's time to stop being polite about it and to actually be active in our bodies about that.
Thank you. Let's get to some questions. First one, what made you choose Toronto as the setting of Crosshairs?
That's a great question. So it was interesting because at first there was discussion from my editor and my agent asking me, would you consider having this book be sort of almost like, how when you watch Schitt's Creek, is that you don't really get a sense that it's like anywhere, like you just know that it's somewhere in North America. And so, and the idea is that then it would be more marketable to other places. But I really wanted it to take place in Canada, because of the fact that Canadians are very talented at marketing themselves to be welcoming, peaceful people, when in actual fact, we have enacted a genocidal campaign towards Indigenous people on Turtle Island for generations. And it is my moral obligation as a treaty person living on this land as a settler, to ensure that people understand that ugly truth about Canada.
What were some of the hardest barriers for you as a woman of color in becoming a well-established Canadian writer?
Hmm. Thank you for asking that question, with regards to barriers. So, in the spirit of allyship, like I want to mention the fact that yes, I did graduate from Ryerson Theater School and in the acting stream. And one of the things that I learned in like that was a very positive thing about being in the theater school, was to learn how to fail, to be in rehearsal, and to take people's critique as generosity. And so I hope that people can take this critique as generosity. Is that my time in Ryerson was actually not the most positive. I experienced a great amount of racism and misogyny. And I say that again in the spirit of generosity because I think that there is definitely a reckoning right now happening amongst most arts institutions. And arts institutions, like teaching young people and getting young artists, this is like the ground zero for the creation. And I think that it's important that art institutions look at themselves, think about who has a seat at the table, all the way from administration to leadership to board of directors, to teachers and instructors, all the way to students who are in the student body, is to consider who is there. And I encourage more representation from the QT BIPOC community in order for us to be respected more. And so that was a major barrier for myself, was definitely going through post-secondary school, feeling that my stories did not matter. And it took me about, I would say, about 10 years following coming to Ryerson that for me to realize that I am a storyteller and that my stories do actually matter. And I have dedicated my life as an artist to teach other marginalized artists, to empower them to create stories outside of the Eurocentric notions of storytelling. And I'm proud of the work that I've done. It really lit a fire under my bum to do that. But I encourage not just Ryerson, but every institution who really have these young racialized artists in their hands, to encourage them, empower them, and know that there are many ways to tell a story, and also find the right people to be on your staff and treat them well in order to make sure that those artists are acknowledged and celebrated.
Wow. There's a lot to unpack there, but I really want to get to some more questions. Thank you for
Absolutely.
that very candid answer and passionate answer. What is one message you hope readers take away with them from reading Crosshairs?
The message that I would love for them to understand is that it starts in your body. Your body does not lie. So you can read all the Audre Lorde you want. You could, get all of the books about and learn about white supremacy. But white supremacy is taught to us every day from the time that we are born, and then that means that any practice of allyship also has to be daily, and it has to be in our bodies. That includes me, because of the fact that I possess a lot of privilege, having grown up in a middle class Asian presenting family, and I present in this world as cisgender. And so I have to think about my privilege as well. And it does. It has to be a daily practice, just like you would commit to binge watching a show on Netflix. It is the same act. Allyship is the same act because your body will not lie. And if we start with our bodies, it means that we can create vast change in our organizations and our relationships with each other. That's what it's going to demand. Not just putting a black square on your Instagram page, not just nodding a lot during people like difficult conversations. It has to start in our bodies, and that's what I'm encouraging people to do while like after reading the book.
As you were saying that, I was nodding.
Yeah, I find myself doing the same things, which is just like, if I nod, then I'm still a good person. But it's not about shame. It's about growing together, and I have absolute confidence that we can grow together if we have those difficult conversations with our bodies first.
We have time for one last question. And Vincent asks, what was the hardest part of writing this book and what was the most rewarding? You can answer that in 1 minute, right?
So, yeah, absolutely. The most difficult and rewarding thing is the same thing, which is that to acknowledge the fact that I have been complicit in the marginalization of people, because even this computer that I'm using to be broadcast right now, there is precarious labor precarious forced labor that created this laptop, and I have a great amount of privilege, and that's the only way I could really write about a genocidal campaign is to understand how I am a part of it. And it's also rewarding because of the fact that now I know that I don't have to put the calories into upholding this fantasy. I can fight back, and that's why it was rewarding as well.
Catherine, it's been very rewarding for me to meet you like this, to read your book. And you've made me think about a lot of things, and I really appreciate it. And I know the people watching right now do as well.
Oh,
Thank you.
fantastic, Marcia. Thanks so much. It was an honor.
And now Christian is going to come back, and the all-important book draw is happening. Who wins a book?
Yeah. Wow. Catherine, you are incredible. Thank you for sharing your wisdom, insights, politics with us. Absolutely ringing true on so many fronts for me personally, but also as someone who works and spends a lot of time at Ryerson on Ryerson initiatives. You are a true inspiration, and we're so delighted to have you as an alum. And you too, Marcia. Your accomplishments are just so incredible, and we're so delighted to have you in the Ryerson family. Particularly as I think a lot about this idea of allyship, living and inhabiting the body. I think that's a really important takeaway for this talk, and something that will resonate, I think, with a lot of us on this Zoom presentation. So thank you to both of you. It is utterly important that we continue to amplify and tell stories of BIPOC and 2S LGBTQ plus folks in our community and beyond. This is a moment in time that we must be committed to for the long haul, and we're here for that. So yes, we do have a book draw, and I am delighted to let you know that Julia Holdway and Vivian Sim, you are the lucky winners. We are going to contact you by email with details about the draw and where to receive the book. So congratulations to the two of you. Thank you again, Catherine and Marcia. Just so you all know, we are going to have another book talk on November 24th at 12 o'clock Eastern. This book talk will feature Ryerson alum Julie Albert and her sister Lisa Nat, who wrote a book called, it's a cookbook, Bite Me Balance. Looking forward to that delicious talk. And in the meantime, please continue to read on. Join us for Ryerson book talks going forward. We have many in the works, and we look forward to connecting with you soon. Marcia, Catherine, thank you again. Good afternoon, everyone. Be well.